The morning mist hung low over the Afghan mountains as Master Sergeant Jake Morrison adjusted his rifle scope for the 100th time. His spotter, Corporal Ryan Davis, lay beside him on the rocky outcrop, scanning the valley below through high-powered binoculars. They had been in position for 3 days, waiting for their target to appear. "Movement at 2 o'clock, Davis whispered, his voice barely audible even to Morrison, who lay just inches away. Morrison shifted his rifle slightly, peering through the scope. Below them, approximately 2,200 meters away, a convoy of vehicles was making its way along the dusty mountain road. Intel had confirmed that Ahmed Hassan, a high-value Taliban commander, would be traveling this route sometime this week. The two snipers had been tasked with what seemed like a straightforward elimination mission. "That's not our guy," Morrison said after studying the vehicles through his scope. "Wrong convoy size." The two men had been working together for over 2 years. Morrison, a veteran of 4 deployments, was known throughout their unit as one of the most accurate long-range shooters in the entire division. Davis, younger but equally dedicated, had proven himself as an exceptional spotter with an almost supernatural ability to read wind patterns and environmental conditions. Their current position was carefully chosen. The rocky ledge provided excellent concealment, while offering a clear view of the primary route intelligence indicated Hassan would use. The distance was well within Morrison's effective range, and weather conditions had been favorable for the past several days. As the wrong convoy disappeared around a bend in the mountain road, Morrison allowed himself a moment to reflect on the mission briefing. Hassan wasn't just another Taliban fighter. According to intelligence reports, he was responsible for coordinating attacks that had killed dozens of coalition forces over the past year. His elimination was considered a high priority by command. "How's your ammunition count?" Davis asked, performing one of their routine equipment checks. "Full complement," Morrison replied. 20 rounds of .338 Lapua Magnum, each one hand-loaded and tested. The ammunition was specially prepared by their unit's armorer, with each round capable of maintaining accuracy at extreme distances. The waiting was always the hardest part. Hours would pass with nothing but the occasional bird or small animal moving through their field of view. Both men had learned to remain patient, understanding that their target might appear at any moment and they needed to be ready. Around midday, their radio crackled to life. "Overwatch 2, this is base. Target confirmed, moving your direction. ETA approximately 30 minutes. Morrison felt his pulse quicken slightly, but his hands remained steady. Years of training and experience had taught him to channel adrenaline into focus, rather than allowing it to affect his performance. "Copy. Base, Overwatch 2 standing by," Davis responded into his radio. The next 20 minutes passed slowly. Both men checked and rechecked their equipment. Morrison verified his rifle's 0, ensuring the scope was properly aligned. Davis studied his range cards and wind speed indicators, preparing to provide accurate firing solutions. "Vehicle approaching from the south," Davis announced. "Single vehicle black SUV matching target description." Morrison positioned himself behind his rifle, settling into his shooting stance. Through his scope, he could see the SUV moving along the mountain road, still over a kilometer away but approaching their predetermined engagement zone. "Range 1,150 meters and closing," Davis called out, tracking the vehicle's progress. "Wind speed 2 miles per hour left to right." Morrison made minute adjustments to his scope, compensating for the slight crosswind. The vehicle was now clearly visible through his optics, and he could make out 2 figures in the front seats. "Target vehicle stopping," Davis reported. "Doors opening." Morrison watched through his scope as several men exited the SUV. According to their intelligence briefing, Hassan was a tall man with a distinctive beard and usually wore a traditional Afghan vest over his clothing. "I have eyes on multiple individuals," Morrison said quietly, confirming target identification. One of the men matched Hassan's description perfectly. He stood slightly apart from the others, gesturing as if giving instructions. Morrison centered his crosshairs on the figure, taking into account the distance, wind conditions, and elevation difference. "Target confirmed," Morrison whispered. "Hassan is standing next to the vehicle's rear door." Davis made final calculations and provided Morrison with the exact adjustments needed for a successful shot. "Elevation up 2 clicks, windage left 1 click." Morrison made the adjustments and settled back into his firing position. His breathing slowed and his finger moved to the trigger. This was the moment they had been waiting for 3 days. "Shot ready," Morrison announced quietly. "Send it," Davis confirmed. Morrison began his firing sequence, controlling his breathing and preparing to squeeze the trigger. But just as he was about to take the shot, something extraordinary happened that would change everything they thought they knew about precision shooting. The target. Hassan suddenly staggered backward and fell to the ground. Morrison's finger was still on the trigger, but he had not yet fired. Through his scope, he could see the other men rushing to Hassan's aid, clearly distressed by what had just happened. "What the hell?" Morrison said, lifting his head from his scope to look at Davis with confusion. "Did you take the shot?" Davis asked, equally bewildered. "No," Morrison replied firmly. "I was just about to fire when he went down." Both men stared at each other in disbelief. Through their optics, they could see Hassan lying motionless on the ground while his companions frantically tried to revive him. There was no doubt about what they had witnessed, but neither could explain how it had happened. "Base, this is Overwatch 2. Davis spoke into his radio. "We have a situation here. Target appears to be down, but we have not engaged." The radio remained silent for several long seconds before Base responded. "Overwatch 2, please repeat your last transmission." "Target Hassan appears to be neutralized, but we did not fire," Davis repeated. "I repeat, we did not take a shot." Morrison continued watching through his scope as Hassan's men loaded his body into the SUV and quickly departed the area. The entire scene had lasted less than 5 minutes, but it would haunt both snipers for years to come. The debriefing session at Forward Operating Base Chapman was unlike anything Morrison or Davis had ever experienced. Colonel Williams sat across from them in the small briefing room, his expression a mixture of skepticism and concern. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as both snipers recounted their impossible story for the third time. "Let me understand this correctly," Colonel Williams said, leaning forward in his chair. "You witnessed the target collapse and die, but neither of you fired a shot?" "That's correct, sir," Morrison replied, his voice steady despite the surreal nature of what he was reporting. "I was in the final phase of my shooting sequence when Hassan suddenly fell backward. My rifle was loaded and ready, but I had not yet pulled the trigger." Davis nodded in agreement. "Sir, I was watching through my spotting scope the entire time. Master Sergeant Morrison's finger was on the trigger, but he definitely did not fire. There was no muzzle flash, no recoil, no sound of the shot." The colonel studied both men carefully. Morrison and Davis were among his most reliable soldiers, with impeccable service records and no history of filing false reports. Yet their account seemed to defy logical explanation. "Walk me through the timeline again," Williams instructed. "From the moment you identified the target until Hassan went down." Morrison cleared his throat and began recounting the events in precise detail. Target identification was confirmed at 13:47 hours. Hassan exited the vehicle and stood approximately 3 meters from the rear passenger door. I made scope adjustments based on Corporal Davis's calculations. Range was 1,150 meters with minimal wind conditions. I provided firing solutions at 13:49 hours, Davis continued. Morrison made the necessary adjustments and assumed his final firing position. He was in the process of controlling his breathing for the shot when the target suddenly collapsed at 1350 hours. Colonel Williams made notes as they spoke. "And you're both absolutely certain that no shot was fired from your position?" "Absolutely certain, sir," Morrison said without hesitation. "A .338 Lapua Magnum round produces significant muzzle blast and recoil. I would know instantly if I had fired. Additionally, my ammunition count remains unchanged from the mission start." The colonel requested to examine Morrison's rifle and remaining ammunition. The weapon showed no signs of recent firing, and the ammunition count matched exactly what had been logged before the mission began. "Have either of you experienced similar incidents in the past?" Williams asked. Both men shook their heads. Morrison had completed over 40 successful sniper missions during his career, and Davis had been his spotter for most of them. Neither had ever encountered anything that couldn't be explained through conventional understanding of ballistics and marksmanship. "Sir," Davis said hesitantly, "there's something else we should mention. While we were observing Hassan's men loading his body into the vehicle, I noticed something strange through my spotting scope." Colonel Williams looked up from his notes. "What did you observe?" "There appeared to be no visible wound on Hassan's body," Davis continued. "No blood, no obvious trauma. His men seemed confused about what had happened to him." Morrison nodded. "I observed the same thing through my rifle scope." If Hassan had been shot by another sniper position, there should have been visible signs of impact, especially at that range with a high-powered rifle. The colonel frowned. Are you suggesting Hassan died of natural causes at the exact moment you were about to engage? We're not suggesting anything, sir, Morrison replied. We're simply reporting what we observed. The timing was extraordinary, but we can only describe what we witnessed. Williams stood up and walked to the window overlooking the base compound. Outside, helicopters were landing and taking off, carrying out the endless cycle of missions that defined life at the forward operating base. I'm going to need both of you to remain available for additional questioning, he said finally. This incident needs to be investigated thoroughly before I can file my report. Over the next 2 days, Morrison and Davis were interviewed separately by military intelligence officers, medical personnel, and even a military chaplain. Each interview covered the same ground, with investigators trying to find inconsistencies in their story or alternative explanations for what had occurred. Dr. Sarah Chen, a military psychologist, spent several hours with both men, evaluating their mental state and looking for signs of stress-related hallucinations or false memories. Combat stress can sometimes cause soldiers to experience distorted perceptions. Dr. Chen explained during her session with Morrison, "Is it possible that the extreme focus required for long-range shooting could have affected your perception of events?" Morrison considered her question carefully. "Doctor, I've been in high-stress combat situations for over 8 years. I understand how stress can affect perception and memory, but what Corporal Davis and I witnessed was not a hallucination or false memory. We both saw the same thing happen at the same time." Meanwhile, intelligence analysts were reviewing all available surveillance data from the area where the incident occurred. Satellite imagery, drone footage, and communications intercepts were analyzed to determine if another sniper team or some other explanation could account for Hassan's death. The investigation revealed several interesting facts. Hassan had indeed died at the exact time Morrison and Davis reported. Intercepted Taliban communications confirmed that Hassan's men were confused and frightened by his sudden death, with some suggesting supernatural causes. However, no other coalition forces were operating in the area that day. No other sniper teams were deployed within range of the target location. Weather conditions were stable with no unusual atmospheric phenomena that might have affected visibility or perception. Most puzzling of all was the medical intelligence gathered about Hassan's death. According to sources within the Taliban organization, Hassan appeared to have died suddenly without any visible wounds or trauma. His men reported that he simply collapsed and died instantly, with no apparent cause. "The whole thing doesn't make sense," Davis said to Morrison as they sat in their quarters on the second evening after the incident. "How does someone just drop dead at the exact moment we're about to shoot them?" Morrison stared at the ceiling, replaying the events in his mind for the 100th time. "I keep thinking about that moment when I was about to take the shot. Everything was perfect. Wind conditions, range calculation, target identification. I was maybe half a second away from squeezing the trigger. And then he just fell over," Davis added, "like someone else took the shot we were about to take." Both men had considered every possible explanation. Another sniper, though none were known to be in the area. A medical emergency, though the timing seemed impossible. Equipment malfunction, though their gear had been thoroughly inspected and found to be in perfect working order. As they prepared for what they expected to be their final debriefing session, neither Morrison nor Davis could have predicted that their strange experience was about to become even more mysterious. 3 weeks after the Hassan incident, Morrison and Davis were assigned to a new mission that would test their skills and their sanity. Intelligence had identified another high-value target, Mahmoud al-Rashid, a bomb maker responsible for creating the improvised, explosive devices that had killed numerous coalition soldiers. The mission briefing took place in the same room where they had been. Questioned about Hassan's mysterious death, Colonel Williams, who had overseen their previous debriefing, was notably absent. In his place sat Major Thompson, a career intelligence officer with cold eyes and a reputation for asking difficult questions. "Gentlemen," Major Thompson began, "I'm sure you're both eager to get back to operational duties after the unusual circumstances of your last mission." Morrison and Davis exchanged glances. The past 3 weeks had been filled with psychological evaluations, equipment inspections, and countless interviews with various military officials. Both men were ready to return to what they did best, Al-Rashid operates from a compound approximately 8 kilometers north of here, Thompson continued, pointing to a detailed satellite photograph. Intelligence indicates he'll be conducting a meeting with other bomb makers tomorrow morning. The target compound was situated in a valley surrounded by steep hills, providing excellent overwatch positions for sniper operations. Davis studied the terrain features while Morrison examined the approach routes and potential shooting positions. "What's the engagement range?" Morrison asked. "Primary position offers a clean shot at 900 meters, Thompson replied. "Well within your demonstrated capabilities." The mission seemed straightforward compared to their previous assignment. Shorter range, better terrain, and multiple escape routes if needed. Both snipers felt confident about their ability to complete the assignment successfully. However, Thompson had additional information that would change everything. "There's something else you need to know about this target," he said, his expression becoming more serious. "Al-Rashid has survived 3 previous assassination attempts by coalition forces." Davis looked up from the satellite photos. "What kind of attempts, sir?" 2 sniper engagements and 1 targeted drone strike," Thompson explained. "In each case, something prevented the elimination from being completed. Equipment malfunctions, target movement at the critical moment, atmospheric interference with the drone's guidance system." Morrison frowned. "Are you suggesting this target has some kind of unusual luck?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Thompson replied curtly. "I'm simply providing you with all available intelligence so you can plan accordingly." The 2 snipers spent the remainder of the day studying the target area and planning their approach. The terrain was more challenging than their previous position, requiring a 2-hour hike through rocky terrain to reach the optimal shooting location. They departed the base before dawn, carrying their equipment and enough supplies for a 24-hour mission. The hike to their position was uneventful, and they reached their overwatch point just as the sun was rising over the mountains. The compound below them was a typical Afghan rural structure, with high mud brick walls surrounding several buildings. Intelligence had indicated that Al-Rashid would appear sometime during the morning hours for his scheduled meeting. Range to primary target area is 875 meters, Davis reported after taking precise measurements with his laser rangefinder. Wind conditions are calm, temperature rising slowly. Morrison set up his rifle and began the familiar process of preparing for a long-range shot. The weapon was the same one he had used during the Hassan mission, though it had been thoroughly inspected and re-zeroed multiple times since then. At 0930 hours, movement was detected within the compound. Several men appeared in the central courtyard, gathering around what appeared to be a table or work surface. "I count 4 individuals," Morrison reported, scanning the group through his rifle scope, attempting target identification. One of the men matched Al-Rashid's description perfectly. He was shorter than the others, with graying hair and a distinctive scar on his left cheek that had been noted in intelligence reports. "Target identified," Morrison confirmed. "Al-Rashid is standing at the southern edge of the courtyard, approximately 880 meters from our position." Davis made final calculations for wind and atmospheric conditions. "Firing solution ready. No adjustments needed for current conditions." Morrison settled into his shooting position, controlling his breathing and centering his crosshairs on the target. Al-Rashid was standing perfectly still, engaged in conversation with the other men. "Shot ready," Morrison announced. "Send it," Davis confirmed. But as Morrison began his final trigger squeeze, the exact same thing happened that they had witnessed 3 weeks earlier. Al-Rashid suddenly staggered and collapsed to the ground, falling face first onto the courtyard's stone surface. Morrison's finger froze on the trigger. He had not fired. His rifle remained loaded and ready, but the target was down. "Jesus Christ," Davis whispered, staring through his spotting scope at the scene below. "He's dead. Just like Hassan." The other men in the courtyard were reacting with panic and confusion, rushing to Al-Rashid's aid. But even from 875 meters away, it was clear that their efforts were futile. Morrison lifted his head from his scope, looking at Davis with a mixture of disbelief and growing concern. "This can't be happening again." "But it is happening," Davis replied, his voice shaking slightly. 2 targets, 2 mysterious deaths, both at the exact moment we were about to take our shots. They watched through their optics as Al-Rashid's companions carried his body into one of the compound's buildings. Within minutes, vehicles arrived and the entire group departed, leaving the compound empty. "Base, this is Overwatch 3. Davis spoke into his radio, using their new call sign for this mission. Target has been neutralized, but we did not engage. The radio silence that followed lasted nearly a full minute before base responded. Overwatch 3, please repeat your last transmission. Target Al-Rashid is down, but we did not fire, Davis repeated. I say again, we did not take a shot. Morrison was staring at his rifle, checking and rechecking the chamber and ammunition count. Everything was exactly as it had been when they arrived at the position. No shots fired, no equipment malfunctions, no explanation for what they had just witnessed. This is getting really scary, Davis said quietly. 2 targets, both dead at the exact moment we were about to shoot them. What are the odds of that happening by chance? Morrison had been thinking the same thing. The probability of such a coincidence occurring twice was astronomical. Yet both men knew with absolute certainty that they had not fired their weapons. Maybe we should request reassignment, Davis suggested. Whatever's happening here, it's beyond anything I can understand. But Morrison was beginning to wonder if there might be another explanation, one that was even more disturbing than random coincidence. As they packed their equipment and prepared to return to base, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were somehow connected to these mysterious deaths in ways they didn't understand. The hike back to base was completed in silence, both men lost in their own thoughts about the impossible events they had witnessed. Neither could have imagined that their story was about to take an even stranger turn, one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the nature of warfare itself. The investigation following Al-Rashid's death was far more intensive than anything Morrison and Davis had experienced after the Hassan incident. Within hours of their return to base, both men found themselves in separate interrogation rooms, facing teams of military intelligence officers, medical personnel, and investigators they had never seen before. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a specialist in military psychology and unexplained combat phenomena, had flown in from Germany specifically to interview the 2 snipers. Her credentials included advanced degrees in both psychology and physics, along with years of experience investigating unusual military incidents. Master Sergeant Morrison, Dr. Vasquez began during their first session, I've reviewed the complete files on both incidents you've reported. What I find most interesting is not just what happened, but your psychological profile before and after these events. Morrison sat across from her in the sterile interview room, feeling more like a laboratory specimen than a decorated soldier. What do you mean by that, doctor? Your stress indicators, brainwave patterns, and physical responses all suggest you're telling the truth about not firing your weapon, she explained. But there are some anomalies in your neurological scans that I find quite fascinating. She showed him a series of brain scan images displayed on a laptop computer. These scans were taken before your first mission involving Hassan, and these were taken after the Al-Rashid incident. Notice anything different? Morrison studied the colorful brain images. Though he had no medical training to interpret what he was seeing, they look different, but I don't understand what that means. The areas of your brain associated with motor control and trigger manipulation show unusual activity patterns, Dr. Vasquez continued. It's as if your brain believes it completed the firing sequence, even though your finger never actually pulled the trigger. Meanwhile, in another room, Davis was undergoing similar testing with a different team of specialists. Dr. James Park, a military neurologist, was examining Davis's brain activity while showing him video footage of both incidents that had been captured by long-range surveillance equipment. Corporal Davis, Dr. Park said, I want you to watch this footage and tell me exactly what you remember happening at the moment each target collapsed. The video quality was grainy due to the extreme distance, but it clearly showed both Hassan and Al-Rashid falling at the precise moments Morrison and Davis had reported. More importantly, enhanced audio analysis confirmed that no gunshots had been fired from their positions. I remember feeling like something was about to happen, Davis said slowly, watching the Hassan footage for the 3rd time. Just before he fell, I had this strange sensation, like the air pressure changed or something. Dr. Park made notes while monitoring Davis's brain activity on a nearby computer screen. Can you describe this sensation more specifically? It was like when you're in a thunderstorm and you can feel the electricity in the air right before lightning strikes, Davis explained. I've never experienced anything like it before these 2 missions. The medical teams were discovering that both Morrison and Davis showed similar neurological anomalies. Brain scans revealed unusual electromagnetic activity in areas associated with fine motor control and spatial awareness. Blood tests showed elevated levels of certain neurotransmitters, typically associated with extreme focus and concentration. Dr. Vasquez brought both men together for a joint session on the third day of testing. "I want to try an experiment," she announced. "We're going to simulate a shooting scenario and monitor both of your brain activities simultaneously." They were taken to an indoor firing range where Morrison's rifle had been set up to target a practice dummy at 100 meters. Sophisticated monitoring equipment surrounded the shooting position, measuring everything from brain waves to heart rate to muscle tension. "I want you to go through your normal shooting sequence," Dr. Vasquez instructed, "but don't actually fire. Stop just before you would pull the trigger." Morrison assumed his shooting position while Davis took his place as spotter. Both men went through their familiar routine, with Davis calling out range and wind conditions while Morrison made scope adjustments and controlled his breathing. "Shot ready," Morrison announced, his crosshairs centered on the target. "Send it," Davis replied automatically. Morrison began his final trigger squeeze, but as instructed, he stopped just short of firing. At that exact moment, something extraordinary happened that left everyone in the room speechless. The practice dummy at the far end of the range suddenly exploded, torn apart as if struck by a high-powered rifle round. But Morrison's rifle remained unfired, and no other weapons were present in the sealed firing range. Dr. Vasquez stared at her monitoring equipment in disbelief. "That's impossible," she whispered. "There's no physical explanation for what just happened." The room erupted in excited conversation as technicians checked and rechecked their equipment. Camera footage confirmed that the dummy had been destroyed at the exact moment Morrison would have fired, but no projectile had been discharged. "Check the dummy for evidence of impact," Dr. Park ordered. Examination of the destroyed target revealed damage consistent with a high-velocity rifle round, complete with entry and exit wounds. However, no bullet fragments were found, and ballistic analysis showed no evidence of any physical projectile. Morrison and Davis looked at each other with growing amazement and fear. Whatever was happening to them was clearly beyond normal human experience. "We need to run more tests," Dr. Vasquez announced. "This phenomenon needs to be documented and understood." Over the next week, the two snipers participated in numerous experiments designed to understand their apparent ability to destroy targets without firing weapons. The results were consistent and terrifying. Every time Morrison went through his complete shooting sequence with Davis as his spotter, targets would be destroyed at the moment he would have pulled the trigger. The experiments revealed several important facts. The phenomenon only occurred when both men worked together as a team. Morrison alone could not produce the effect, nor could Davis with a different shooter. The range appeared unlimited, with targets being destroyed at distances up to 2,000 meters during testing. Most disturbing of all was the discovery that the effect worked on living targets as well. When they tested the phenomenon on laboratory animals at extreme range, the results were immediate and lethal, exactly matching what had happened to Hassan and al-Rashid. "We're dealing with something that challenges our understanding of physics," Dr. Vasquez explained during a classified briefing attended by high-ranking military officials. These two soldiers appear to have developed some form of telekinetic ability, specifically related to their sniper training and teamwork. General Patterson, the base commander, listened to the presentation with obvious skepticism. "Doctor, are you seriously suggesting that these men can kill targets with their minds?" "I'm suggesting that they can somehow project the physical effects of rifle fire without actually firing a weapon," she replied. "The mechanism is unknown, but the results are undeniable." The implications were staggering. If Morrison and Davis truly possessed this ability, they represented a new form of warfare that could revolutionize military operations. Targets could be eliminated without any physical evidence, making detection and defense nearly impossible. But as the testing continued, both men began experiencing serious psychological effects. Nightmares, anxiety attacks, and a growing sense that they were losing control of something they didn't understand plagued their daily lives. "I never asked for this," Morrison confided to Dr. Vasquez during one of their sessions. "I just wanted to be a good soldier and serve my country. Now I feel like some kind of weapon that I can't control." Davis was experiencing similar distress. "What if this ability starts working when we don't want it to? What if we accidentally hurt innocent people? Their concerns were well-founded, as they were about to discover that their newfound ability was far more unpredictable and dangerous than anyone had realized. The nightmare began during what should have been a routine training exercise. Morrison and Davis had been transferred to a specialized research facility in Nevada, where military scientists continued studying their inexplicable abilities under controlled conditions. After 6 weeks of intensive testing, both men thought they were beginning to understand and control their strange power. Dr. Vasquez had developed what she called mental safety protocols, designed to help them consciously activate or suppress their ability. The training involved meditation techniques, breathing exercises, and mental visualization designed to give them conscious control over what had previously been an unconscious phenomenon. The key is recognizing the moment when your minds synchronize, Dr. Vasquez explained during one of their training sessions. Both of you show distinctive brainwave patterns just before the effect occurs. If you can learn to recognize and control those patterns, you should be able to prevent accidental activations. The training facility included an advanced shooting range with multiple monitoring systems and safety protocols. Morrison and Davis practiced their mental control techniques daily, gradually learning to activate their ability on command and, more importantly, suppress it when necessary. For 2 weeks, the training appeared successful. They could consistently produce their mysterious effect when instructed, and they seemed able to prevent it from occurring during normal activities. Dr. Vasquez was optimistic about their progress. "You're both developing excellent control," she told them during a progress evaluation. "I think we're ready to try some more complex scenarios." The next phase of training involved simulated combat situations with multiple targets and time pressure. The goal was to ensure they could maintain control of their ability even under stress conditions, similar to actual battlefield environments. The simulation began at dawn on a Tuesday morning. Morrison and Davis were positioned in a mock sniper hide overlooking a training area, populated with both hostile and friendly targets. Their mission was to eliminate specific threats while avoiding civilian casualties. "Remember," Dr. Vasquez instructed through their radio headsets, "maintain your mental safety protocols throughout the exercise. Positive identification before engagement, and conscious activation of your ability only when intended." The first part of the exercise went perfectly. Morrison and Davis successfully eliminated 3 designated targets using their mysterious power, each time maintaining complete control over when and how their ability activated. But during the 4th engagement, something went terribly wrong. Morrison had identified his target, a mannequin dressed as an enemy combatant positioned 800 meters away. Davis provided the usual spotting information, and Morrison prepared for what should have been a routine elimination. "Target acquired," Morrison announced. "Preparing to engage." "Cleared to fire," Dr. Vasquez responded from the observation bunker. Morrison went through his mental preparation sequence, consciously activating the strange neurological state that preceded their ability. But as he focused on the target, he felt something different. The sensation was stronger than usual, almost overwhelming in its intensity. "Something's wrong," he said urgently. "I can't control it." Davis looked at him with alarm. "What do you mean you can't control it?" Before Morrison could respond, the designated target exploded as expected. But the effect didn't stop there. Like a chain reaction, every target in the training area began exploding in sequence. Hostile targets, friendly targets, civilian mannequins, all destroyed within seconds. "Abort the exercise," Dr. Vasquez shouted over the radio. "All personnel take cover." But the destruction continued beyond the training area. Windows in nearby buildings began shattering. Vehicles parked hundreds of meters away suffered catastrophic damage. And even aircraft on a distant runway showed signs of mysterious structural failures. Morrison was convulsing, his body shaking uncontrollably as waves of energy seemed to pour out of him. Davis tried to help his partner but found himself caught in the same overwhelming sensation. "We have to stop this," Davis shouted over the sound of continuing destruction. "People are going to get hurt." Emergency medical teams rushed to their position as the mysterious effects gradually subsided. When the chaos finally ended, the damage assessment was staggering. Everything within a 2-mile radius of their position had suffered some form of unexplained destruction. Morrison was unconscious and had to be rushed to the medical facility. Davis remained conscious but was experiencing severe neurological symptoms including temporary blindness and loss of motor. Controlled, Dr. Vasquez found herself facing the worst-case scenario she had feared from the beginning of her research. "We've created something we can't control," she admitted to General Patterson during an emergency briefing. "Their ability is growing stronger and more unpredictable." Medical examination revealed that both men had suffered significant neurological damage during the incident. Brain scans showed unusual electromagnetic activity that appeared to be spreading to areas of their brains not previously affected. "It's like their brains are being rewired," Dr. Park explained to the medical team. "The areas responsible for their ability are expanding and connecting to other neurological systems." Morrison remained unconscious for 3 days. When he finally awakened, he discovered that his perception of the world had changed dramatically. He could sense the structural integrity of objects around him, feeling their weak points as if he were touching them with his hands. "I can feel everything," he told Dr. Vasquez during his first conscious interview. "Every building, every vehicle, every piece of equipment on this base. I know exactly where to strike to destroy them all." Davis had developed similar sensitivities, but his abilities seemed focused on living targets. He claimed he could sense the life force of every person within several miles, knowing instinctively how to disrupt their biological functions. "This is beyond anything we anticipated," Dr. Vasquez confided to her research team. "They're not just projecting rifle shots anymore. They're developing broad-spectrum destructive capabilities." The military command faced an impossible decision. Morrison and Davis had become potentially the most powerful weapons in human history, but they were also completely unpredictable and possibly uncontrollable. Security around the facility was increased to maximum levels. Both men were kept in separate isolation units with constant medical monitoring and psychological support. Any contact between them was strictly forbidden, as their combined abilities had proven catastrophically dangerous. "What have we become?" Morrison asked during one of his sessions with Dr. Vasquez. "Are we still human, or have we turned into something else entirely?" Dr. Vasquez struggled to find words of comfort, but the truth was that she didn't know the answer to his question. The two soldiers had clearly evolved beyond normal human capabilities, but at what cost? "We're going to figure this out," she promised, though her confidence was shaken. "There has to be a way to help you regain control." Meanwhile, intelligence reports were coming in from Afghanistan that added another layer of mystery to their situation. Taliban forces in the region where Hassan and al-Rashid had died were reporting strange occurrences. Weapons were malfunctioning, equipment was failing mysteriously, and several key leaders had died suddenly without explanation. "It's like their ability is still active even from thousands of miles away," Dr. Park observed during a classified briefing. "The effects they produced in Afghanistan may be continuing to spread." General Patterson was growing increasingly concerned about the implications. "Are you telling me that these two soldiers could potentially affect targets anywhere in the world?" "We don't know the limits of their range," Dr. Vasquez admitted. "The incident here at the facility suggests their capabilities are expanding rapidly." The research team was working around the clock to understand and hopefully reverse what had happened to Morrison and Davis, but every test revealed new and more frightening aspects of their abilities. During one experiment, Morrison was asked to focus on a steel plate located in a separate building. Within seconds, the plate developed stress fractures that spread throughout the entire structure, forcing evacuation of the building. Davis demonstrated similar long-range effects when asked to sense life forms in the surrounding area. Not only could he detect every living creature within miles, but he seemed capable of affecting their biological functions just by concentrating on them. "We have to consider the possibility that we're dealing with a completely new form of consciousness," Dr. Vasquez told her team. "Their brains may have developed capabilities that transcend normal physical limitations." The psychological toll on both men was becoming increasingly severe. Morrison reported constant nightmares about destroying everything around him, while Davis suffered from overwhelming sensory input that made normal sleep impossible. "I can feel every heartbeat, every breath of every person on this base," Davis explained during one of his sessions. "It's like being connected to thousands of people all at once. I don't know how much longer I can handle it." Dr. Vasquez realized they were running out of time. Both men were deteriorating rapidly, and their abilities continued to grow stronger and more unpredictable. Something had to be done before their condition became irreversible or, worse yet, completely uncontrollable. "We need to try experimental treatment," she announced during an emergency medical conference. "If we don't act soon, we may lose them entirely." The proposed treatment involved using electromagnetic therapy to attempt to restore normal brain function. It was dangerous and had never been tested on cases like theirs, but it represented their only hope for returning Morrison and Davis to some semblance of normal life. Both men agreed to the experimental procedure, understanding that it might be their last chance to regain control of their lives. As they prepared for the treatment, neither could have imagined that their ordeal was about to take one final, unexpected turn that would change everything. The experimental treatment was scheduled for a Friday morning in the facility's most advanced medical wing. Dr. Vasquez had assembled a team of the world's leading neurologists, physicists, and military medical specialists to attempt what many considered impossible: reversing the mysterious changes that had transformed Morrison and Davis into living weapons. The electromagnetic therapy device resembled something from a science fiction movie. Multiple arrays of precisely calibrated equipment surrounded 2 medical chairs, where the patients would be seated during treatment. The goal was to use controlled electromagnetic pulses to disrupt the abnormal brain activity, while hopefully preserving their normal neurological functions. The procedure carries significant risks, Dr. Vasquez explained to both men during their final briefing. "We could restore your normal brain function, but we might also cause permanent damage or memory loss." Morrison looked exhausted. The constant sensory input from his expanded abilities had prevented him from sleeping properly for weeks. "Doc, at this point I'm willing to risk anything to get my life back." Davis nodded in agreement. "We can't go on like this. Either fix us or put us out of our misery." The treatment began at 800 hours with both men connected to extensive monitoring equipment. Dr. Vasquez personally oversaw every aspect of the procedure, making minute adjustments to the electromagnetic frequencies based on real-time brain scan data. For the first hour, everything proceeded according to plan. The abnormal electromagnetic activity in both men's brains began to decrease, and their vital signs remained stable. Dr. Vasquez allowed herself to feel cautiously optimistic, but at 09:15 hours, something unexpected happened that would change the entire understanding of their condition. As the electromagnetic therapy reached peak intensity, both Morrison and Davis began speaking in perfect unison, despite being in separate rooms with no means of communication between them. "The connection was never ours," they said simultaneously, their voices carrying an eerie synchronization. "We were chosen as conduits for something far greater." Dr. Vasquez stared at her monitoring equipment in shock. Both men's brain patterns had suddenly synchronized perfectly, showing identical waveforms despite being subjected to different electromagnetic frequencies. "What connection?" Dr. Vasquez asked, though she wasn't sure if either man was still conscious in any normal sense. "The network spans continents," they continued in unison. "Soldiers throughout history who reached beyond normal limits. We are not the first and we will not be the last." The monitoring equipment began registering readings that defied scientific understanding. Both men's brain activity showed patterns that suggested they were accessing some form of external information source. "There are others," Morrison and Davis said together. "Snipers, pilots, submarine commanders, artillery specialists, all connected through moments of perfect concentration and shared purpose." Dr. Vasquez realized that what they had assumed was a unique phenomenon affecting only Morrison and Davis might actually be part of something much larger. "How many others?" she asked. 17 active nodes across 6 continents, came the synchronized response. "The network grows stronger with each new connection." Suddenly, reports began flooding in from military bases around the world. Unusual incidents involving highly trained military specialists were being reported from facilities in Germany, Japan, Australia, and other locations. In each case, teams of elite soldiers were demonstrating abilities similar to what Morrison and Davis had developed. "It's spreading," Dr. Park observed, watching data feeds from multiple international sources. "Whatever affected these 2 men is appearing in other military units globally." The electromagnetic therapy was having an unexpected effect. Instead of suppressing Morrison and Davis's abilities, it seemed to be amplifying their connection to this mysterious network of enhanced soldiers. "We can see through their eyes," they said in unison. A sniper team in Germany just eliminated a target without firing. A submarine crew in the Pacific destroyed an enemy vessel through focused intention alone. Dr. Vasquez made the difficult decision to continue the treatment despite these alarming developments. They needed to understand what was happening before it spread further. "What is the purpose of this network?" she asked. "Evolution," Morrison and Davis replied together. "Humanity's next step in the art of warfare. Physical weapons become obsolete when consciousness itself becomes the ultimate tool." As the treatment progressed, both men began providing detailed information about other members of this mysterious network. They described specific military operations occurring in real time on the other side of the world, information that was later confirmed by intelligence reports. At 10:45 hours, something remarkable happened. Morrison and Davis suddenly opened their eyes and looked directly at Dr. Vasquez, speaking in their own individual voices for the first time in over an hour. "Doctor," Morrison said clearly, "we understand now what's happening to us. And we know how to control it," Davis added. The monitoring equipment showed that their brain patterns had returned to more normal levels, though they retained the enhanced connectivity that had developed over the previous months. "The network isn't something that happened to us," Morrison explained. "It's something we helped create through our partnership and dedication to precision. The universe itself seems to respond to perfect coordination between trained minds." Dr. Vasquez studied their brain scans carefully. The abnormal electromagnetic activity had stabilized at manageable levels, and both men appeared to be regaining control of their enhanced abilities. "We can choose when to connect to the network," Davis said, "and we can choose when to use these abilities. The key is understanding that we're not victims of some external force. We're participants in human evolution." Over the following weeks, Morrison and Davis worked with Dr. Vasquez to develop training protocols that could help other affected soldiers learn to control their enhanced abilities. The mysterious network of enhanced warriors continued to grow, but with proper training, its members could learn to use their powers responsibly. The two snipers eventually returned to active duty, but in a new capacity. They became instructors in what the military officially classified as advanced tactical consciousness training, teaching other enhanced soldiers how to master abilities that science couldn't fully explain. "We never did figure out exactly how it works," Morrison admitted during one of his final interviews with Dr. Vasquez. "But we learned that some things don't need to be understood to be controlled." Years later, the phenomenon became known in classified military circles as the sniper effect. Though its mechanisms remained mysterious, its applications revolutionized special operations around the world. Morrison and Davis continued their partnership, leading a new generation of warriors who understood that the deadliest weapon was not the rifle they carried, but the focused intention they brought to their mission. Together they had proven that human consciousness itself could transcend the normal limitations of physics and time. The two men, who had once declared a shot impossible, had discovered that impossibility itself was just another barrier waiting to be overcome through perfect teamwork and unwavering focus. Their story became legend among military special operations forces, proof that the limits of human capability were far beyond anything previously imagined.